So now we move to the piece of the program is basically this is your time, your turn. So to make any comments, suggestions, questions that we should be able to complement and to give more color to what we have introduced to you right now. And then after the break, we will be more in detail in the sequence of talking you about the journey with Bill talking about Wyeth. And then James and John to give you a practical sense, not only about China, but it's even more important about how do we work in this 1 + 1 = 3 in China. But now,
So we'll open it up.
yes, please.
Patrick Schwendemann, Zurich Cantonal Bank. In the past, you gave us some indications what you were expecting, what your expectations are in the long term in terms of nutrition. You gave us this 10 years ago that you want to double it, for example, or in the past you also gave us some indications. What are your margin expectations for this business? So where do you want to go in, let's say, in 5 years? Thank you.
I would not start talking about 10, 20 or something like that, just to avoid these kind of things. My point here is, look, this business is poised to a great development, both in 3 things. In consumer acceptance, in what we call this basic market share, being able to convince more mothers and healthcare professionals to work on that. And we have targets about that. In terms of growth, when you are very well positioned in the world of where the birds are, and you have a good opportunity with a good match combination, we should basically having growth that is above our average model, as we said. And of course, all this should also give us improvement in terms of our margins as a good expression of the quality of the work and the value of our brands. That's what I'm going to tell you. But if you like to see, it should be always the average. It should be above the average, as we have been doing. So.
I think Warren, you have your hand raised. Warren, just press the.
It's just a question about breastfeeding. You say breastfeeding is best, but if you actually look at breastfeeding rates in Asia, they've absolutely plummeted. I think I read that breastfeeding rates in China have halved in the last decade, and the same is true across many other Asian markets like Indonesia and Philippines. So I guess the question is, obviously this has been a huge benefit to all the formula manufacturers who have benefited from the reduction in breastfeeding rates in Asia, but what is being done to actually educate those mothers in those markets that actually breastfeeding is best, and actually the perception of imported formula is better than breastfeeding is actually wrong?
That's on. Okay. First of all, I'm keen to look at your data because actually this is globally breastfeeding rates are actually not dropping. It's interesting to see where that comes from, because we definitely would take those numbers very seriously. Concretely, what are we doing? We have, I would say, a number of initiatives. Firstly, we work in every market together with usually the Ministry of Health or either pediatric associations to set up promotions of breast milk. There is globally a World Breastfeeding Week that actually was just completed about a month ago, and we really center around that period. So that's, I would say, the most concrete example of what we're doing. And then on top of that, for us, we are not competing with breast milk. We are competing with our competitors, yes. But it is there is no doubt that we will always be very clear on the superiority of breast milk. And we will always, when you look at our detailing material, the first thing that we say when we talk to doctors is always about first the superiority of breastfeeding. No.
And maybe I would like to add to your comment is two things is when it comes to our people in the field, we don't give them any targets in sales. They don't have any targets on sales. We're very much in agreement. That was one of the key elements of the Food for Good. We don't give samples to mothers. And this is quite important. We have been in this business for more than 140 years, and we like to be another 140 years. And our commitment is serious, and I can say this is the most scrutinized company in the world, starting in the 70s. And we have been able, even though, to demonstrate our commitment and to make. There's another element that you talk about that, is that what you see, there is a historical correlation. Breastfeeding rates in Europe and developed countries has going up and up and up. One of key elements is the maternal leaves. In countries where mothers will have, let's say, 4 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 months or 6 months of time in basically to stay with the baby, you see a clear correlation of that. So there is a lot of initiatives today going on in the world in order to do this kind of stuff, which goes beyond our responsibility. But just to make sure that you understand that this is a very key element of that. And I think that our ability to continue growing our share is based on the capabilities of showing the value of our products versus the other products that are on the marketplace and doing things the right way.
It's Peter Wick from 2X Ideas. In your marketing strategy or corporate strategy overall, where does a nutritional claim end and where does a medical claim start, and how far would you go in terms of making a medical claim or even a pharmaceutical claim?
Well, I think that's an interesting. You don't have medical. You have what you have is health claims. And then you have different regulatory units that regulates food. In this area today, health claims, basically, for example, in Europe or even in US, are being more scrutinized, and you know the position of the EFSA authorities and EFSA in France to be more tough in terms of making sure that what you do needs to be demonstrated by not only clinical trials, but the way you are using your products. So in our area, we're very much regulated by the claims linked to the capabilities for us to demonstrate. This is not what you call medical claim, because the concept of medical, like what exists is drugs. Drugs are basically on the hands. We are not in drug business, not even here, not even in Nestlé Health Science when I'm going to talk to you. There is a category called medical food in US that is basically regulated by the FDA. And is a category called food for a special medical purpose in Europe, which is the equivalent of that is also regulated by the authorities in Brussels, which have clear guidelines of what you can do and what is the reason of existing of a product like that and how this could be reimbursed or even prescribed by doctors. But we work in this line between medical food or, let's say, specific food in the area of babies, which is regulated by, by the criteria of infant formula feeding. Maybe we start here and then we go. Yes.
Hello, Fintan Ryan from Berenberg. Just actually a related question with regards to probiotics in Europe and making those claims. Are you working with EFSA to, I guess, advance the acceptance of these claims, or what's your stance with regards to specific probiotics?
I don't have the details here. Maybe, Heiko, I don't know whether you have the details. But yes, we work with that. But you need to be aware that the probiotics we're talking here is probiotics in cereals, which are very much linked to the specific regulation and consumption of that, and then probiotics in infant formula that are basically linked to, first of all, with the clinical studies. Remember what I think it was Heiko that says we have more than 100 clinical trials today going on in different fields of nutrition. And all these are basically discussed. We will have never had any claim or even any position in our products, in our label, that has not been confirmed and accepted by clinical trials. And even in this case, it's even more important, it's about healthcare professionals. It's not about regulations. If a basically a pediatrician or a doctor, you cannot demonstrate the quality of your message, they will not even buy that, despite whether it is accepted by. So there is already our business model basically works very much with healthcare professionals. You have heard about the Nestlé Nutrition Institute. This is where we discuss initiatives, this is what we have endorsed, and then we do it, and then we demonstrate, and then we work with the authorities. Yes, please.
It's Eddie Hargreaves from Canaccord. Just wonder if you could give us an update on the disposal of those parts of the Wyeth portfolio that you will need to dispose because of antitrust considerations.
As I am clearly ring-fenced, because I cannot talk about that, I will leave this to Wang Ling.
We had, when we signed, well, that was last year, 18 months ago, we had anticipated about 15% of the Wyeth Nutrition business will have to be divested. And that was, in fact, what had occurred. We had sold our Australia, South Africa business, as well as Latin America business to a company in South Africa called Aspen. And that is we've signed, and they have taken the regulatory risk, not us, so.
And I think in Latin America, we just got the approval of the Colombian antitrust body for continue doing that. But there, I think it was, and then we.
It's James Edwards-Jones at RBC. Heiko, can you say a little bit about how your role now differs from running a market? What have your priorities changed?
Well, I'm 6 or 7 weeks actually into the job, so it's maybe a bit premature to comment on that. But needless to say, it's a different role. I was 6 years in Greater China, which is also a market that I would say requires a good combination of strategy and execution. And as you have seen, we have made significant changes in the past 6 years in our operation in China. About my new role, this is really my, within Nestlé we often do different categories, but we also have one that is really our core category. And for me, I was extremely happy to be asked by Luis to take this role, because this is really my passion. I've worked out of my 17 years with this group, 15 years in nutrition-related categories, and I think it's an incredible business, because it's not just a business. It's we are trying to do something more than that. We are trying to improve the lives and build healthier generations, and that's what personally drives me, on top of obviously delivering good results. But we'll see in the coming years how my role will change from a market. Obviously, there's changes.
Thank you. I'm just trying to, if you can discuss, the per capita opportunity, because in most consumer products, we normally talk about, per capita in emerging markets versus developed markets. But when it comes to formula, particularly formula, how should we think about that? I'm talking particularly, 6 to 12 months, is the per capita consumption per 1,000 babies, say, in China compared with the US similar? If you can just help, all I'm trying to do is trying to understand, where does the growth come from? Does it come from getting people to trade up? Does it come from extending people in this type of milks beyond 12 months? Or is there a big per capita opportunity actually in emerging markets on that 6 to 12 months range? Thanks.
Well, maybe first to talk about, first of all, we have breastfeeding. Then if we look at many markets, we actually see that there is a lot of inappropriate substitutes being used. I think in many markets we see actually people, for those mothers who cannot or for some reason choose not to breastfeed, they start to use, for example, regular milks, or even we see in some markets condensed milk, or different types of usage. So I would say that's our first source of growth, and in many emerging markets we see this happening. Also in China that was the case. Because we don't like to use like a per capita across the world. I think it's more important, because that would kind of indicate that breastfeeding rates are the same all around the world, and as Luis mentioned, you know, things like how long is the maternity leave, how many of the percentage of men and women are working. These are all impactors to the size of the category. But looking broadly into the emerging markets, we still see, first of all, that there is a lot of inappropriate breast milk substitutes being used, and that is I would say, the first reason for growth. Secondly, obviously, the trading up because of economic growth, and China has been the most visible sign of that, simply because the economic growth is going so fast. So all the trends we can see much faster in China than what we can see them in any other markets, but certainly also countries like Brazil or even Indonesia. I was there last week myself. We see this trend. And then lastly, I would say the availability of products. In many emerging markets, our expansion of distribution and both, I think John will speak about this later in China, there's still many areas where our products do not reach yet. And this is also an important growth driver.
But I mean, maybe just one comment. I was, to your point, I think in line exactly what Heiko was said. This area of inappropriate substitute, basically when it comes from 3, 4, 5 months, 6 months, is an important element of us driving that. I was recently in Mexico. I was with the health ministry in Mexico. We have implemented this some years ago, we have different charts when we go to the visit a market, and we have our review meetings with them. One key chart is how is breastfeeding evolving in the marketplace, how is infant formula evolving, and how is other solutions, which could be from different products, from regular milk, for even things like, I will tell you one thing. In Mexico, there is 10% penetration of Coca-Cola in babies at 3 years of age. And I think Coca-Cola is a great thing, but not for babies of 3 months. And that's something that we have been able, through these studies, that fit studies that we have today a bunch of information, and we share this with the government. I spend a lot of time with the government. We ask the Mexican government will be more tougher in regulations when it comes to not making that infant formula could make inroads in, because one country in the world that infant formula has basically going up and breast milk has going down was Mexico. And when I saw that, we decided to have a specific discussion with the government. And I was there, we were discussing that. We have been implementing a program, and we are working with the government to increase breastfeeding rates, and also to make sure that improper substitutes are not part of the solution in this country. Brazil is the same thing. The penetration of infant formula over 3 months, of breast milk 3 months, or even infant formula goes basically dramatically down. And when it comes is regular milk. And we are working in order to make sure that we don't only make people aware of that, but we can develop educational programs and then basically supporting the governments to take the right measures. Yeah.
Thank you. Céline Panutti, JP Morgan. I have 2 questions. My first question, I think during your presentation, you mentioned that Jenny Craig, you were not happy with development since it has changed since the crisis, and I think you mentioned strategic review. Could you be more explicit about what does that means? What are the different strategic options? And my second question is looking at performance, nutrition, and weight management, which are now 9% of the division. What is the strategic roadmap for these categories? What is going to happen? Are there always going to be the poor children with baby formula being so big, or is there a development area for them too?
Yeah, I already mentioned that in the case of weight management, or basically Jenny Craig, you know that what I said is this business has been performing very well. We have been having good results. But since the last 2 years, the category has been basically, it's not only us. You have seen that Weight Watchers, Nutrisystem, others has been suffering. And the business is in a situation, a challenging situation today. And what you will expect a company like us is that when you have that, you sit down and you evaluate what is the plans. They're already executing a plan in order to basically improve and changing the marketing mix model to make sure that we are still relevant for people in the US. And beyond that, as a company, we always review that. This is what I can tell you today. That's what we're doing today. When it comes to the other businesses, what is true is that Nestlé Nutrition is very much geared when you have taken the healthcare nutrition part and putting in this new company that is Nestlé Health Science. And it's basically an infant nutrition, and that's what we thought it was important. When it comes to performance nutrition, specifically in Power Bar, this is a great brand. We love the brand. We have been doing recently a strategic review, concentrating back to core athletes. This business has been also suffering. You might remember, some of you, the Atkins diet in the US some years ago, how this went up, then went down, and the things that has been happening. We were in a given moment maybe expanding too much the Power Bar to more the cereal bar kind of concept, which was not the right way to do. So we took this back, and we're concentrating in core athletes. We have a great innovation program, and the brand is very good, so we are just working on that. Yeah. Yeah. Then both of you, and then we go to
John Baumgartner, Wells Fargo. Just, in terms of the industry itself, how close is the industry to mapping the nutritional profile of breast milk? And I guess, going forward related to that, in terms of the functional ingredients in the market, brain development, immunity, gut digestion, what's really left for the next frontier for innovation going forward?
Well, I would like, sorry, your first question was?
The first question?
Yeah.
Just in terms of mapping the nutritional profile of breast milk. Like, how close is the industry? Like, where does that stand? How much is left really to go?
Well, basically, I would not say what the industry, I know what we are doing. And what we're doing is basically what I told you, that not only that we work with the authorities and with governments and with different bodies in order to basically make the right approach in order to promote breastfeeding and to make sure that this is part of the 1,000 days journey. I think this is a very important point. When we present to you, I was presented infant nutrition 10 years ago, I didn't talk to you about the 1,000 days. That's a key initiative thanks to the science and the development. That's what we're mapping, and that's what probably today you would see more and more also the industry thinking about that. That's one. When it comes to the new frontier in terms of innovation, I think there is plenty of opportunity. What I have shown you, we map all what we call the platform benefits. So what we do is, we do in research and development, we work very closely hand in hand between the consumer lead groups and the R&D groups. When I create nutrition basically in 2005, one thing that we did is we create an innovation model that is quite unique. Basically, you have groups of people. We don't have only one person. We have a group of people, of two persons, basically. One is more running the consumer benefit, the other is more running the R&D benefit. And by doing that, we combine, so we can have a plan that is embedded between what the mother, what the baby needs, and what science could possibly bring. And this is the consequence of this platform that you have here. Behind each platform, you have people working on that. So I think the frontier is to exploit and to make this viable, and basically to make sure that we develop solutions and good arguments behind that through clinical trials to demonstrate the quality of our effort. But there is another interesting thing, We have been working in this. Breast breast milk is fascinating. Mother Nature is incredible. The way that the proteins change in breast milk is just outstanding. One thing that we develop, for example, in babyness, one specific nutrition is the concept of evolving nutrition. Because basically, you know, when you have a baby, the first 3 days you have something that is called colostrum, which is basically kind of cleaning up what the baby has inside and to give some immunity protection. This is not milk. This is just a kind of, you know, thing, a cleaning agency, sorry. It's not. And then milk changes every day. So we, you know, if you like to replicate that, you should have a kind of everyday different kind of milk because the composition changes. With babyness, we have tried to develop this frontier by developing this concept of capsules that you have seen in order to have more capsules, which from a scientific point of view is great, from a business point of view is more difficult to execute, in order to adapt the needs of the baby towards kind of mimicking what the mothers gives. And you know, we have been working for 140 years, and I don't think we will ever be able to match that. So that's quite incredible.
Rob Dickerson from Consumer Edge Research. I just had a question about baby nutrition in general in the U.S. You know, since the Gerber acquisition, it seems like the category has become much more competitive, right? There have been smaller players that have evolved that have recently been acquired. So I'm just curious, kind of going forward. You know, I guess one, how do you differentiate yourself to regain share in the category in the U.S.? And then two, do you see pricing becoming a bit more competitive over the next few years? Thanks.
I think you're referring specifically to baby food, right? If you look, because in formula, it's very similar, the competitive profile. Yeah, baby food in the US, which in fact already is a very dynamic category, I would say, probably together with a few markets in Europe, an extremely dynamic category with a lot of innovation, has seen now more small players entering. Now, I wouldn't say these have been low price players. I think we're seeing more innovation around more organic products, more natural products, different formats, like you see a lot of pouches, for example, these days. So I would say the already high innovation rate of that category has only been increased, and which I think is good news for the category. I mean, if it was a pricing game, it would have been less exciting, because that would drive less innovation, would drive more cost cutting. So we welcome this, and I think also Gerber has responded fast with a lot of new innovations also in that category. But yes, it will be more competitive. Yeah. In the back there.
Nicolas Burti, Mirabeau. Could you please expand a bit on the opportunity of nutrition for breastfeeding mother? Because on your product map, I see that there are two FM85 amongst probably 15 products. So is it an opportunity to be developed? Maybe not, I don't know. Can you expand a bit on that, please?
Well, that product is very specific. This is when you are in a situation that breast milk is not sufficient. So concretely, this is for babies that are prematurely born. They need often higher levels of proteins and other nutrients because they have to catch up on their growth. And what would happen very often is that mothers would then stop breastfeeding and give specific formulas to their infants because breast milk was not sufficient. And rather than to encourage stopping of breastfeeding, we launched a product called FM85, which is something you add to your breast milk so that you can actually boost it with certain nutrients so that you can continue to breastfeed but still give the additional nutrition that is needed for kids at a specific age. So that's a very specific product. It's also a concrete example how we support and And we're actually, we've run significant amount of clinical trials on this, and that this is actually the best solution in that case.
Also, maybe to add to that is with the Wyeth acquisition, you have seen that we talk today, we talk about infant nutrition, but we have had the name maternal on infant nutrition, because there's also a good products coming from the acquisition of Wyeth. We already had some called Mom and Me, which is basically a specific meal for pregnant mothers in order to give them the nutritional needs for the mother in order to be prepared. And we talk about the -9 till the 2. And with the acquisition, we got a brand called Materna. In fact, this brand today is being sold in the market called Centrum Materna. You know, Wyeth, the Centrum brand is an important one. Centrum Materna, we have a plan in order to enhance the Materna brand. We have already agreements with them in order to replace the Centrum name. And the idea is that we are going to develop a new business opportunity, which will start to be small, to be very honest, in order to see how could we supplement with, with folic acid and all initiatives in order to make sure that we have also probiotics, folic acid, all these things are today putting in a kind of cocktail to develop new initiatives. This is a new opportunity that came as a consequence of the Wyeth acquisition, and we are going not only to promote this through the Wyeth markets, but also in the Nestlé markets where we can use the Materna brand without any problem, and also the technology and the knowledge that we have just inherited or we bought as a consequence of that. So that's another element that you're going to see more and more.
Tom.
Give this a try. Heiko, how can you get the message out to the consumer on the urgency of that first 1,000 days nutrition that sort of crosses over your various categories and products, but gets the news out in a way that will drive the consumer more forcefully to substitute your products for on top of breastfeeding, but just to educate in some ways the public. I know you've been doing great work with the NGOs and all the rest, but what about the consumer?
Yeah, this is an excellent point. I mean, if you look at the importance of the first 1,000 days, and you combine that with the fact that every parent has only one objective, is to help their child reach their full potential. So it seems such a natural fit. Is why is there still such misunderstanding of how to do this well? I think there is a significant opportunity to talk more about that, and I think the good news these days is that because the world of media is changing so much, and I think the digital space is a very good space to talk about this in much greater detail. I mean, we see that consumers are getting more and more involved in their own health. I think we see many websites that are kind of talking more about medical issues, and that's where you can get more detailed, because you need to be detailed here. This is not a 30-second TV commercial to explain this. This is really about going into the detail and setting up a program for that. So we are working on this. I think it's still a big upside, and that's also a very motivating area to work on, to be honest, because this is a very relevant point in today's world where we have malnutrition and undernutrition and overnutrition. So it's a very urgent point also to now get this right as from a global perspective. So work in progress, I would say. We're not yet there exactly where we want to be.
But also, to your point, is we were just recently in South Africa. We were having a presentation and discussion about the nutrition business. And we had already meetings with some, local governments, and also from South Africa. There is a lot of things happening that influence the rest of Africa, at least neighborhood countries. And this concept of the start healthy, stay healthy, and developing programs to educate mothers where we can give them already the basis, the scientific basis to play while they could do the job, is something that is now going further and further. We just went to to what was in a kind of public body of the South African government that is very much interested in collaborating with companies to promote healthy lifestyles. We're part of that. There's a lot of things happening, not only in this, in other countries, in order to pass this. I think this is a very powerful message, and we need to do it right, and we need to do it in a consistent way. And of course, it has benefit for us, but it's even more important, has benefit for society.
Andrew Sawyer, First Manhattan. Just a quick one on Brazil. You talked about the use of inappropriate substitutes, and this is one of the places where your global business units and your regional business units have some degree of conflict, since one of those inappropriate substitutes is your own fortified milks. And I was wondering how you manage that internal conflict in terms of that organization marketing their product versus infant formula. And then a second follow-up question on that is, Danone and Mead Johnson have identified this, I guess we'll call it a vulnerability in your business, and have launched, pretty much greenfield in Brazil. How have they made inroads, and can you just talk to that situation generally?
Yeah, maybe two comments. There is no conflicts in our company. There are different units trying to achieve consumer benefits. What is clear is the concept of appropriate, not appropriate substitutes is very important. So nobody will ever do something that will jeopardize this message. We can have different business units, we have different products, but what we have in Nestlé is what we call priorities. And that's a fundamental point on the way we execute things. When it comes to your comment, I will not enter in details of that, but I can tell you we have one of the strongest positions in the world is in Brazil, and we're keeping with that. Sorry.
Yeah, Michael Crawford from Bessemer. You talked earlier about higher margins in this business, but could you also talk about the capital requirements? Does it require greater investment in plant production facilities because of the safety requirements? And also, clearly, you paid out a lot in goodwill. Can you talk about how capitally intense the whole division is?
Yes, it is relatively capital intense in terms of manufacturing the products, but I would say not that meaningfully different. I mean, and I think this is also where Nestlé can leverage its skill very good, because in many of our infant formula factories, we can combine this with our dairy factories, because when you have to make a powder product, fundamentally the drying technology is very similar. So we can leverage skill probably better than any other, because we're also leading in the field of dairy. So that helps us to, I would say, have much higher capacity utilizations in a faster period of time than probably other players who do not have a sizable milk powder business.
Yeah, let me just add to what Heiko said in terms of capital intensity or capital efficiency for our nutrition business. I can tell you from a return standpoint, it's really good. We do not give out return by business, but it's very good. And so to the question about the goodwill associated with the acquisition of the Wyeth Nutrition, we had indicated when we signed the deal that the return on this business should exceed cost of capital in about year 4. So it's in terms of the synergy numbers, in terms of what we're seeing so far, it's on track. So.
How big a deal do you expect explicit or implicit price control to be on a 5-year view? And do you see this changing significantly, taking markets at random, such as China?
Well, we can talk about China in greater detail later. We are in many situations around the world, actually. I wouldn't say price control, but more in a situation of price justification. So whether in Southeast Asia this is very common, and other markets also, because this is such an important category in a country. The governments always ask us to talk about, before we take price increases, to inform them, to take them through the rationale. And this is something that we have been used to for many, many years. So, you know, helping governments understand the changes in commodity prices, helping them understand the innovations that we bring that obviously also often have a cost. What is very important for us in that context is that we continue to follow through on our multi-tier strategy. If you are only in super premium or premium, this risk is much more significant than if you have a multi-tier pricing strategy. And as you know, probably Nestlé has very good strength also at affordable and mainstream ranges of our products. So this is one of the great complementarities that we have also around our wild nutrition business. And I think James and John will talk about this later. We see that clearly in China, but we see that all over the world.
I had a question about per capita consumption of baby food in developed markets. For example, I was thinking in the US, it seems that consumption is relatively high. Is it similarly high in countries in Europe? And if it's different, does that present you with opportunities or challenges? And then secondly, I was just also interested in what you can do with baby food. Specifically, you mentioned that consumption is relatively low. How do you plan on, what's your strategy for increasing that? And is it mainly a function of income? Thank you.
Yeah, I will leave this, but just to give you a sense, penetration in US is high. We defined a category, you have heard about baby food, right? And you basically is what we call complementary foods. In our 1,000 days, we look at that. And then we have what we call cereals. In fact, the best solution is that you always start with the first cereals. Normally it should be a gluten-free cereal, only one, and then you move to a more, let's say, sophisticated combination, either from cereals or we start giving them the solid food in the form of the meals and drinks, as we said. But it's interesting to see in the world, there are markets where when the meals and drinks, let's say the Gerber, is very strong, cereals are basically a market that is not very developed. And when you go the other way around, it's exactly like that. And you have basically, in Europe, you have the markets, if you take France up, they're very much meals and drinks driven. If you take the Southern Europe, which basically Portugal, Spain, Greece, Italy, this part of the world is more infant cereals driven. If you go to Brazil, it's very much infant cereals driven, and then baby food is small. If you go to Mexico, it's more kind of the US. That's why we look to the category in a holistic way, and we develop solutions. We believe that there is opportunities for growth in both things, especially our focus is in infant cereals, where we have a leading position in the world, and there is still a lot of markets that we can develop this more. India is a great market, good penetration. China, we are doing a great job now improving that. It will be maybe comment afterwards. So holistic vision, per capita consumption, or if you penetration, we like to more per capita is penetration. Penetration meaning how much mothers are using that, more than how many kilos they are using that. And because we know that this is part of the don. When they incorporated these products as a part of the complementary food, and then healthcare professionals support that, that's a ruling movement. And we have been seeing that. The innovation you have seen has been also been able to be convincing healthcare professionals by the use of that.
Yeah, it's I would say still a very interesting category in many markets. Fundamentally, what happens is that when a child is around 6 months of age and you start to introduce him to complementary foods, his tummy is about the size of a golf ball, just about this size. Now, but the infant needs a lot of nutrition, because that growth that you saw in the video and that we spoke about is really incredibly high. So the requirements for for micronutrients at that stage is extremely high. And we see that still in many markets, parents believe that it's better to quickly go to homemade food that you're also using at home and that parents are eating. The problem can sometimes be with those products that they're not dense enough in nutrients, because if you have to put everything into such a small tummy, you better make sure that those products are very dense in nutrition. So I would say the key driver is very much education, and getting that message across, and obviously as we follow on our commitments and a certain way of marketing our products, we do this in the emerging markets through doctors, because we are not speaking directly to mothers at that age. We do that through the medical profession, who then can, and obviously we have to convince them, these are professionals we're talking about. This has to be really scientifically proven, who can then offer this solution to their patients.
The other thing, I think you just to finish that, I'm convinced that you have seen maybe in China last year when Nandu Nankishore present you the AOA, and you have seen our initiatives in micronutrient fortification. So we have also a mapping, and we develop solutions that are different depending on the nutritional needs. When it comes to Africa, and I was telling you, I was there, we were discussing with the government, iron deficiency, iodine deficiency, zinc deficiency. It's not only for mothers, but consumers, also for babies. So you adapt this, and that's why you work with healthcare professionals. That's a good way to increase penetration, by proposing the right solutions for specific deficits in a specific parts of the world, which are not, for example, in the developed world, the same stuff.
National Bank in Toronto. You haven't mentioned affordability, which must be very, very sensitive in your business.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I didn't spend so much time maybe on this, but on the slide on the multi-tier portfolio, if you look at our portfolio, we are actually extremely deep in the lower price tiers, specifically when you compare ourselves to other companies. We have always had that very high on our agenda, I would say, from day one, because we have been in many of these, specifically in the emerging markets, we have been there very long. And in those days, things were maybe a bit different than what they are today. So this concept of a brand like Lactogen, and even we have Nestogen in many markets. If you go today to Brazil, you'll find that the affordable products is the Nestlé range. So we do not focus only on premium. And again, this has to do also with the commitment to not just look at the category, but to look at the first 1,000 days of life. Infant cereals, by the way, is also a very cost-effective way of bringing nutrition to larger parts of the public. So it's very high on our agenda, particularly when we obviously operate in markets that have lower income. In fact, I started my own career working in Nestlé Bangladesh, and I was, and this is one of the poorest countries in the world. And we were able to bring products there, and the level of infants dying of simple things like diarrhea is really sad. And so bringing products that are affordable is also very high on our agenda.
When you enter in complementary foods, cereals, which Nestlé is very strong everywhere in the world, and basically gear also to developing countries. I'm convinced that in Bangladesh, cereal was one of the key products. If you go to, I've been not working there, but traveling a lot. You go to India, the penetration of Cerelac is huge. The penetration of cereals, even in South Africa, the need to have porridges in order to help mothers to educate themselves and also to babies is huge. And we are the company that are really having solutions for that. And we have even this kind of strategy where you have benefits, you have brands, you have price points, and we work closely this in order to have an approach that we're not going to leave any territory unattended.
Small follow-up question. I'm sure packaging and what you say on the packaging, what your product is for, is very important, because when a customer goes to a row of packages, they have to identify that your product is what they need.
Yeah, if you look to, we can always do better, but if, first of all, there is two ways that we look at packaging, is following the norms and the agreements, either with the FTSE for Good, Double George Code, where basically our commitment to make sure that the packaging are basically what it should be, and avoid that we kind of create expectations by putting, you know, images of babies. This is something that has been always forbidden, and we are not losing that. So it's more about information, and information should be very clear. And if you look to our packaging, we also have to say, well, what is the product, what it's for, how you need to, and then there's always a message that is prominent in different places about breastfeeding is best. And in some countries, this is so important that the predominant message probably will be that.
I think I see John. John.
Yeah, good morning. John Cox with Kepler Cheuvreux. Two questions for you. Just on the future of the nutrition division, just wondering where you may see strategic opportunities for expansion. Obviously, you've become a very infant sort of nutrition-focused division. You talk a lot about cereals generally, and I'm wondering if that is an area where you could see greater leverage of nutritional products into, say, adult form. That's the first question. Second question, just on supply chain regarding Fonterra's mishaps. I'm just wondering what sort of impact that is having on your sort of nutrition supply chain in terms of potential shortages in some countries where there's been bans, or and what you're doing to avoid that. Thank you.
Maybe the first one you want to take on the nutrition, where you want to take the nutrition division.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you want to take it.
Yeah, when your first question, what about the nutrition division? I think basically what we said is that you have seen the journey, and you have seen this journey has been complemented. So I think here what you have is in the Nestlé Nutrition, the territories are clear. The focus is basically in the three categories we mentioned, with a predominant point of infant nutrition, the 1,000 days. So, and we're going to work closely even more in the future to align internally and even externally all the initiatives toward the 1,000 days. That's the predominant concept here. And what you see also from an acquisition point of view, that we are, what I say is we're pretty much done, because we're basically covering the geographies products. I think that you have we are the number one. We have a huge business. It's more than 10 billion today. Is growing. Is having average growth higher than the group, which we have been doing and we are committed to do in the future. So opportunity for expansion is basically increased penetration, deliver higher growth opportunities, segmentation. Our three-tier strategy is going that we're going to push. The arrival of a Wyeth gives us not a good business in itself. It gives you, and we're going to talk in a minute afterwards about this concept of embedding, in the concept that we're going to take the best out of that. So I see great opportunities in existing markets where Wyeth is not present, to see possibilities of leveraging maybe the brands, but maybe also the science that is behind our existing products. So I feel that here in infant nutrition, you have a great business in front of us, and then of course you have Power Bar, which is a small piece, but concentrating on key athletes, and then weight management that we're going to evaluate the way forward in the coming months. But I see this as a great opportunity and something that this company is going to enjoy for many, many years. And I don't see why this is not one of the key drivers of that. In addition, we can talk about Nestlé Health Science, which is a completely different set, but I believe that the questions and the comments will come this afternoon. But for me, this is, and also the fact that this is the driver element, as we were saying, the core of what we're doing, the benefit of this and the spillover effect around the rest of the Nestlé company is huge. And I'm convinced you are going to listen to Thierry Filardot this afternoon, how that enhance the value of nutrition, health, and wellness. This journey that was starting basically 15 years ago is also giving a fantastic possibility to work in adult nutrition. We also will talk about infants. For me, it's a fantastic opportunity. But if you think the world of adult nutrition and the needs of people in proteins is huge, and I will leave this to Thierry to convince you about this great opportunity. Maybe the second part.
Yeah, on the supply chain and related to the recent news triggered by Fonterra. Well, I mentioned already before that having full quality control over your supply chain is, I would say, one of the must-haves in this category. And when it comes to producing infant formula, actually we manufacture 100% in-house. We do not want to be in a situation where we don't have full control of our infant formula manufacturing. And I think the recent case is an example. I don't want to comment too much on that. I think there's been a lot said and then not said about it. But we have our clear philosophy. We've always had this, and we're not going to compromise on that.
Thanks. Just a quick follow-up. Being from an emerging markets myself, I guess I should know the answer to this question. But what is the image of the Nestlé brands in infant formula in emerging markets? And the reason I ask that, I don't know if you can put the slide back where you showed the different brands in your portfolio across the different age groups, and I think you even put Nido there. And what I'm trying to understand, and perhaps it's unfair, but isn't there an image issue to some extent in infant formula for Nestlé being this very big, large company, but mostly perhaps entry, mass market brands, and that gives an opportunity for other players to benefit as people begin to trade up? I know that's a very simplistic question because obviously your portfolio is much bigger than that, but is there an image issue in terms of infant formula? And is that why Wyeth would be so relevant in places like Mexico and Brazil? I don't know if you can comment on that, but it would really help if you can put that slide up there, because I was surprised that you would put Nido on the slide. Because if I'm in Brazil or Chile and I'm thinking of Nido, I think of Nido as ambient milk. I don't know why it was even there on the slide. Thanks.
We are going to put, I don't think you have said Nido. I don't remember that we have shown. I think we have shown Nidal.
You might want to put it up. I mean, I could be wrong, of course.
Maybe. But to your comment, and I think Heiko could talk about Asia. He has been there, so he could give you this perspective. In my own perspective, traveling the world and knowing quite well from my previous job in Zone Americas and knowing the Latin America countries quite well, I can tell you the image of Nestlé.
It was there. Sorry, Luis, I'm sorry.
I think the multi-tier is this one. This is the one, right? Anyway, I didn't put Nido there because that's not in infant formula.
But just to give you, so for my, we follow very much the image of our brands, as you imagine. The image of our company as a nutrition, health and wellness company is first to none in all Latin American countries. The image in terms of the government and the support that we receive is great in all these parts of the world. Of course, we have big business, but the relationship that we have created and the brands is great. And I can share this with you, but this is something that we follow every year. We have track records of what we call the brand health tracking of the Nestlé company, and one of those is basically infant nutrition. And infant nutrition for the majority of the countries in the Latin American, Central American is huge. When it comes to Asia, I believe this is exactly the same thing. Here we might have other competitors that also have a great image and great brands, but also Nestlé has a great position on that respect.
You're right. I just saw it on slide number 9. It's on another slide. There is indeed Nido there because that's related to our toddler milks, not to our infant formula. Well, if we look at Asia, there is no doubt that Wyeth is very complementary in the premium segment. I think there is this is a reality, and but then again, brands is what you make of them. You know, you have to shape them. You have to shape them with innovation. You have to shape them with you know, coming with new and better things. I think you all had this morning, and just to talk about another category, I think you all had a Nescafé Dolce Gusto. Probably 10 years ago, maybe some of you even 5 years ago would not expect to have a Nescafé product like this. So innovation has to play a key role, and I don't think that brands are, they are a function of the past and a function of our behavior in terms of supporting them, driving them. That's brand management. So I think in Latin America we have fantastic strengths. And yes, but we have to be multi-tier. That is for sure the case.
I think maybe we'll take one last question and we'll go for a break. John.
Just coming back on innovation, you had the Babyness launch in Switzerland a year or so ago. Haven't heard much about it since. Just wondering, was it a bit of a flash in the pan, or is there a future for that Babyness product?
Yeah, we launched Babyness last year in Switzerland, and then we extended it in France. The comment is that in Switzerland, according to our KPIs, our plans, the Babyness is doing fine. Is doing, I would say, even better in terms of penetration and repeat purchase when it comes to mothers. It's a very small business, and we have been considering that also launching in Switzerland is a way to better understand what the dynamics of this category. We have been very happy to see the results that we have achieved in Switzerland. France is more subdued. France, the penetration is not at the initial levels that we thought, but we have plans to expand this outside of Europe in the coming years. I would not give you the details so much because I prefer to give it for me, but this is a great innovation. This is the technology behind, the quality behind, the innovation that we have put in the capsule, because this is like, I know quite well Dolce Gusto because I launched it in Europe. The technology in Babyness is in the capsule. Like in Dolce Gusto, the technology, the machine is in the capsule. And this is a great thing that we have been doing and we have been developing, because we have the System Technology Center that is able to deliver good transversal kind of innovation to different categories. We have now plans to introduce this and to test this in other markets. Of course, this is not, you know, you work with, you cannot advertise that. You have a key element in terms of matching the requirements of our code and the way we promote infant formula. But in some cases, the messages we have been receiving by mothers is very good, which gives us the possibility to go beyond these two markets, specifically with the good results in Switzerland, and we are testing this outside.
Well, great. Thank you for all the questions and the level of engagement. Let's take a break. We are running just a tad early, but we'll come back at 11:15. So thank you.